This is the Late Round Podcast with your host, JJ Zacharisa.
What's up, everyone? It's JJ Zacharisa, the editor-in-chief at FanDuel and at NumberFire.com, and this is episode 416 of the Late Round Podcast, one of the many shows that are part of the FanDuel Podcast Network. Thanks for tuning in. Before getting to the trends this week, I want to remind you guys about FanDuel's Sunday Million contest. If you missed out on the first 2 weeks of the season, don't worry. The stage is set for you to play for a big payday in Week 3. For just $4.44, you can enter the Week 3 NFL Sunday Million and compete for your share for the $2.75 million prize pool, including a $1 million first-place prize. With 13 games on the slate and superstars like Russell Wilson, Ezekiel Elliott, and Dalvin Cook on the schedule, there's no shortage of big-name fantasy players to build your lineups around. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. Trend 1 this week is that the Chargers have a .61 pass-to-rush attempt ratio in neutral game scripts this season. That's the lowest rate in the NFL. That number actually isn't dramatically higher in terms of overall ratio for the Chargers, partially because they've run a good number of plays when games have been within 6 points. It's very clear, though, that the Chargers want to go with a run-heavy game plan. That should give players like Joshua Kelly and Austin Eckler a decent floor each week, but it also limits the ceiling that we could see from Eckler specifically as a receiver. And that leads me to trend number 2 this week. Joshua Kelly saw his percentage of running back rushes go from 36% in Week 1 to 59% in Week 2. He also ended up with almost a 10% target share in Week 2 after failing to see a target in Week 1. His teammate Austin Eckler barely saw more volume through the air, but he had a rush share that was significantly lower against Kansas City in Week 2. And then Eckler only played 4 more snaps than Joshua Kelly this past week. Now, this is less about Eckler, who bounced back a bit and saw a higher target share in Week 2 versus Week 1, though it was still about 6 percentage points away from his 2019 total. This is more to say that Joshua Kelly isn't going away, and he's absolutely a flex-type player moving forward, if not better. Only 2 players have seen at least a 30% target share in each of their first 2 games to start the year. One of them is Adam Thielen, which isn't that much of a surprise because there aren't many alternatives in that Vikings offense. The other one, though, is Diontae Johnson. I talked about Johnson a bit on last week's show and how everyone was praising Juju Smith-Schuster after that Monday night game against the Giants. But Diontae was the one who led the team in target share, and he did it again this past week. On the season, Johnson has 23 targets. Juju is second on the team with 14. The breakout is happening, and I'm not totally sure if everyone's in agreement. So I'd continue to buy Diontae Johnson. Both Daniel Jones and Ryan Tannehill have thrown it 15 or more air yards at a rate of about 6% this year. Those are the lowest marks in the league. Tannehill's been without A.J. Brown, though. Daniel Jones has faced the Bears and the Steelers. At least some of that makes sense. At least there's some reason for it. The biggest surprise within that statistic, though, in my opinion, is that Patrick Mahomes has thrown it that far on just 7.6% of his attempts. That's the 3rd lowest mark in the league. I expect that to jump up. But in his 2 games, he's really just going with what's given to him. But that could be a problem for fantasy football, at least potentially moving forward. Saying anything is going to be a problem with Patrick Mahomes is kind of a stupid thing to say because he's unbelievable. I'm just noting that the deep ball rate has definitely been different here in 2020. And this is a trend show, so I've got to call out that trend. Trend 5 is that Tennessee has now thrown for 6 passing touchdowns, but they've yet to find the end zone on the ground. They're one of 2 teams, Chicago being the other one, without a rushing touchdown this year. Now, if you've got Derrick Henry, you're feeling a little bit annoyed right now. But for the first time in pretty much forever, Henry's a regression candidate on the positive end. For what it's worth, I almost mentioned him as a buy on this week's 15 Transactions episode. So let this be that transaction. I would be looking to buy Derrick Henry. DJ Chark has just an 11% target share through 2 games, and in each contest, he hasn't hit higher than a 15% share. I'm concerned about DJ Chark. He has a perfect catch rate, and his week 2 yardage total was fine. But that was in a game where Jacksonville threw the ball 45 times, and Gardner Minshew had 339 passing yards. It's a good sign that Chark has over 21% of his team's receiving yards despite his low target share total. But his air yards profile is lacking, and he's only been targeted in the end zone once. His peripherals don't look very good. I don't think he's a sell per se, because I believe in the talent. And Jacksonville has a pretty nice schedule over the next month. But I don't think this is automatically a buy low moment for DJ Chark. They've spread the ball around a lot so far, and that's a little bit scary. The two leaders in end zone targets, and remember, these are targets that count when a player is targeted in the end zone, not in the red zone. But one of the two leaders is pretty obvious. It's Calvin Ridley. Ridley's crushing it right now. He's easily going to pay off his ADP this year unless he gets hurt. And for the sake of my fantasy teams, Calvin Ridley, please do not get hurt. But the other player is one that I talked about in the 15 transactions episode. And I really should have brought this up on the show, but it's AJ Green. Seriously, guys, analytically, Green is the easiest buy candidate of all time. I just have my worries that he's not the same type of player that he used to be. I still think he's way more of a buy than a sell, though. This early season usage is out of control. The Panthers have thrown to their tight ends at a league low rate. Panthers tight ends have a 5.4% target share so far. That naturally means the Panthers targets are going somewhere else, and they are. They're one of 4 teams with a wide receiver target share at or above 70%. And they've targeted their running backs at a pretty high rate too. This is a brand new scheme, a new offense, a new quarterback, and it's not looking very good for Ian Thomas. If you're holding out hope in season long, I think it's safe to drop him. It's a small sample size, but there are a lot of tight ends that are popping up these days. So it's not necessary to ride out Ian Thomas. After a week 1 where he saw just a 6.3% target share, Clyde Edwards-Helaire saw an increase in week 2 of about 11%. He had a 17.8% target share against the Chargers. He's now been over a 70% running back rush share in each of his first 2 games, which is a great sign, but so is his week 2 usage as a receiver. As long as he sees the goal line looks in this offense, he's an RB1 in fantasy football. Now, the last trend this week is that Nyheim Hines played 9 snaps on Sunday. 9. Jonathan Taylor played 49, and Jordan Wilkins was at 17. I think this just goes to show that if Indianapolis is a very nice positive game script like they saw against Minnesota, Nyheim Hines is not going to be heavily involved. After seeing 35% of the team's running back rushes and over 17% of the team's targets in week 1, Hines saw 0 rushes and a 4% target share in week 2. And they get the Jets this week, so maybe we don't see a whole lot of Nyheim Hines once again. Although I would expect we see more than what we saw in week 2. This is Jonathan Taylor's backfield, though. Taylor now has 63% of the team's running back rushes and 11.3% of the team's targets. He should be a higher-end RB1 from here on out. That's going to do it for today's show, though. Thanks to all of you for listening. If you've yet subscribed to the Late Round Podcast, make sure you are by searching for it pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. And as always, don't forget to follow me on Twitter @LateRoundQB. Thanks, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow with the weekly matchup show.